I'm in my bag. So soft and so tender. Daddy in the kitchen and he told me, son, listen. He said, you don't have to play the part that they wrote for you. You don't have to play. Hello, everyone. I'm Rich Robbins. Welcome to this episode of Soft and Tender, where each week we explore Black fatherhood through the conversations between sons that they've raised. Our goal is to highlight the unique and universal aspects of love in Black families, showcasing how these fathers express love and care despite societal challenges, along with broadening our understanding of what fatherhood means and how that meaning can evolve. Before we dive into this week's discussion, let me introduce our guests. We have to my far right, Renzell, producer and owner of Studio Shapes. To my left, we've got Kay, Cannabis Educator and Media Personality. And to my close right, we've got Qari, hip-hop artist and father. Gentlemen, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate y'all taking the time to dive into this discussion about love languages. That's what we're talking about today, you know. So if we could just get things kicked off, let the audience know who your primary father figure is or was growing up, and a little bit about them, where they're from, and who they are. Kay, we'll start this off with you.
Okay, yeah, for sure. My dad, DJ, social butterfly, chef, music aficionado, like that's just a person that I've always looked at as being so alive and in love with just like the relationships that he fosters with people. Like he had always instilled in me that relationships were so important. And yeah, like I think that all encompasses him. Like he's just a very alive person and very in love with everything around him.
Yeah, I can relate to that with my pops too. Amazing. Okay, DJ?
DJ.
Shout out
yes,
DJ.
Sir.
Shout out DJ. Qari, how about you?
My father is a hard-working man. He's a hustler. He never stops working, never stopped. He always talked about just him wanting to make sure he was the best provider. So I really got to see someone work to provide, because I don't think his father was very present in providing for him when he was growing up. So that was very important to him. I'm going to see that. I definitely had multiple father figures growing up, you know, just in the community and neighborhood. I think a lot of Black men can relate to that, just like, you know, who's around, whoever is older around in Black, I think we looked up to, you know.
Facts.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I can.
Yeah, and I see that hustle in you too. And you were saying too, being
My
a
dad
social.
does it.
And then maybe that's the plight of all sons. Really, is like same thing for me. I'm always like, I feel like my pops isn't necessarily seeing the hustle behind the scenes, you know, type of thing. But and it's just knowing how social you are too. I'm seeing, I'm putting it together.
My dad hustles for money. I think we hustle. We strive for something else, right?
True.
Like,
Facts. I agree with that. Yeah, Renzell, how about you?
My dad's Lon Rudolph Sr. So I'm a junior.
Hey,
you know,
okay.
So I think I spent my life even like looking up to him as the hero, the superhero, to always be that person around us, the family, that's that guy that was in my life that was like, oh, okay, I'm trying to be the best version of myself so I can prove to this guy that I'm him. You know what I'm saying? So he is a business owner and also I think he sells commercials. He's a salesman.
Oh, nice.
So I learned a lot of my like just how to be in the corporate world, how to be social, how to be, just like navigate through life through just how he was with his, his friends, with people at work, with his family. So, yeah.
And I see that in you too. I mean, obviously owning Studio Shapes and running that space, which is a fantastic and incredible resource for people all around, I see that connection with your pops and what you're explaining his ethic is too. I'm gonna read this question just verbatim because it's got some words in it here. So, in what ways have societal pressures and stereotypes about Black masculinity influenced the expression of love and affection in your family? And I want to take this one first, just to give y'all a little time to think about, how you want to respond to it, because it's kind of a loaded question, right? And I was thinking about, societal pressures, like what, various ways that we are put into these narratives as Black men. And I think my father really expressed love through his involvement in my life. He came to as many sporting events as he could, encouraged me to do extracurriculars and things like that. Was always, wondering who was going to be at the places I was hanging out at. I had curfew type of thing. He was always on me about grades and even helped me with some homework and things like that. And at the time, I didn't receive it as love, which I think is a clear distinction of his expression of love and how I received his love. I thought I was kind of in this cage, because of all this, like what I saw as overbearing, right? But come to find out, as I get older, I'm like, no, that involvement in a way I think is a radical way of loving your son as a Black man, right? And so despite all the societal things going on, he was like, nah, I'm shifting the narrative. I'm very involved, right? When in fact, actually, a lot of Black fathers are involved in their children's lives. There are obviously institutional and systemic reasons why we are given a different narrative, right? But Kay, I'll bounce this question over to you. How have you seen this reflected in your own household?
Yeah, kind of touching on what Qari said. My dad's dad was not there for him when he was growing up. And that absolutely made an impact on the type of father that he wanted to be. So he was very present. He was very there. Like he wasn't, the math person to help me out, but he was killer at writing. And, he would teach me about like negotiating and things like that. And kind of also, like we were saying, he would be hard on me in ways that I didn't necessarily understand at certain points in time. Like, I started getting involved with cannabis kind of late in the game. And so I wasn't necessarily batting heads with him in high school about it, but it was the breaks when I would come home and I would be, smoking and still in his house, and we would have to kind of have conversations, you know what I mean? Yeah, just that. And I think that he's always kind of been mindful about being the best father that he can and making sure that I didn't, fall onto any path that wasn't necessarily for my best benefit. And however he could ensure that, that's what he was going to do. So whether that was, helping me with sparring practice for martial arts, or, what I'm saying? Now he sends me guitar videos all the time because he's like, I know you need to be practicing guitar, so make sure you watch this Eric Clapton video. And it's little ways that, like, now that I'm growing older, I'm like, man, why is he sending me 30 videos of just random Instagram stuff? Like, now that we're apart, like, that's the way that he shows love to me. And I'm just like, I'm learning ways to recognize that, because I think that I was fortunate to grow up in a way differently than him. But because of that, I didn't understand a lot of the decisions that he made. You know what I mean? I felt like in some ways I was like, oh, I can't do this or I can't do that. And it was just him making sure that I was protected. Like, we ain't play with no airsoft guns. We ain't play with no toy guns, things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, same in my household. I was always jealous. Like, even water guns, like we couldn't do that, And now again, like in hindsight, looking back on my dad's life and knowing where he came from, I understand why we weren't, given that kind of those kind of things to play with, Renzell, I heard you kind of reacting to some of what Kay was saying. Any of that resonating with you?
Yeah, for sure. I think my dad just instilled in me to be a leader, and I think he always was pushing that narrative, learn. A great leader also knows how to follow too, at the times of learning and the times of gaining knowledge and growing. He always instilled in me knowing when to learn from someone and knowing also when to be a leader and make your own decisions. So that was something very huge. I always was in the house. He always stopped me, before I went to school. He's like, what's the 5 thing? What's the thing you need to be a leader, you know what I'm saying? Don't he had these things that he always would tell me that I would just, instill in me every day, just making me say it over to him, And at the time, it was how I just said it to you. It was kind of dang, I don't really want to do this, but now that I think, in hindsight, it's that really helped me and really made me go to school and not want to do what everybody else was doing. I think another thing what you were saying from this question was how it I went to school and I saw a lot of toxic masculinity. Like that's what I was raised around. That's how we, you know, that locker room talk, you know, and that's really like how, you know, like, you know, you don't want to go to school and be labeled as soft and labeled as like, you know, like the emotional dude or something like that. And he instilled in me to just not care about what people thought, you know, not care about like what they, you know, you don't have to do what everybody is trying to do. You know, everybody wants to go smoke weed or something. You don't got to go do that. You know, you do it. I mean, now I do, but you know, choose it at your own time. And I literally like to this day, like I'm very like strong-willed and very like opinionated and stand on what I believe in, and I don't really move with like what the crowd is trying to do.
I definitely see that in you, and see how you pick that up from Pops for sure. Qari, how about you? What about you know, we are obviously conditioned to believe certain things about ourselves, right? And how did you see any of that, or how was that? How did that affect the expression of love within the household growing up for you?
Yeah, I think there were some points where it's difficult to express love for someone else if you didn't see a man doing that growing up. And I think there was that discrepancy with my father at times, and I think to this day, even us growing, and you know, my dad's pretty young too. He's in his late 40s. I'm 27. And he started therapy a few years ago, and it's been wonderful for him, you know? Yeah. But when I look, yeah, I think, you know, my dad's he has a sensitive side where he is a loving and very caring person. So I think it's natural for him, even though it can be uncomfortable. And I think learning the language, like learning how to deliver love was something that he had to learn. And definitely, I think I also had to learn that because, you know, I think one thing cool about my father, though, what I was able to pick up from him was like this. My dad has always been a very charismatic and confident person, and like this kind of like self-love. I think I really was able to pick that up from him. I've always kind of looked up to him in that regard, to like be as confident as he is in himself. It's almost it's like radical. I used to think he was just full of himself, you know, but I understand that comes with just like how he carries himself and the pride that he has in that, and how he presents himself. It's reflective of that.
Hi, I'm Darius Hillman. Joining me on the next edition of In the Arena, the board president of Emmaus, Clarence Booth.
You know, sometimes God doesn't necessarily pull you back, but he says, you know, you decided this path, so I'm going to let you do that. And then once you exhaust yourself, then I'll step in.
Join the conversation Tuesday at 7 p.m. on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 and streaming on cantv.org and the CAN TV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
I'm in my bag. So soft and so tender. Self-love as a black man is always it's such an interesting thing to unpack, especially like when you add politics to it, because we have such a history of being emasculated by whiteness, you know. And so like when you find a confident black man, it's like, not like on one hand it's like, oh, you cocky, but on the other hand it's like, nah, be cocky. Like you deserve to be cocky. You know?
I think I still, because I encounter that, you know. When I'm trying to, it's like trying to be confident is funny. It's a funny phrase, but literally, like we have to stand on who we are as black men out in the world, and that touches people. People react to that. Like, why are you so you? Why are you so assertive? Mm-hmm. Why are you so here right now? Right.
Why are you so here right now?
I gotta be, because if I'm not, then who am I gonna be? You know?
Right. If I'm not, they're gonna take that from me. You had also said something that stuck out to me is your father had to learn how to deliver love, you know. And I think that when we talk about love languages, there's such a distinction between how we want to give love and then how we want to receive love, right? And so for those that are at home that maybe are not familiar with the love languages, it was coined, I don't know if it was invented by this man or coined by him. Gary Chapman wrote a book in 2015 called The 5 Love Languages, The Secret to Love That Lasts. You've got them on these pieces of paper that I handed out to you, but the 5 love languages, according to scary are words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch, right? Reflecting on your relationship with your father or father figures, how has it shaped your understanding of love languages, right? If we were to boil down love to these 5 categories, which we know love is beyond just 5 categories, as some man that was a marriage counselor decided, you know what I'm saying? But if we were to go along with this, this idea that, you know, we do have certain ways that we want to express love and certain ways that we want to receive it. You know, when you reflect on your relationship with your father, how has it shaped that understanding? Renzell, we could bounce that to you first.
Yeah, I believe like my dad showed me, both my parents really showed me how they loved me through what they did, you know, like through just so acts of service really stands out to me. So when I show love, it's the more, when I receive love and how I know and understand it is through someone doing something for me or telling me something, affirming these things as well. And I think the affirmation more comes from my parents not necessarily doing that all the time. So now I'm like, oh, I need to kind of hear this thing, you know what I mean? But in turn, they still showed me so much. They did things where it was like, you know, like you come home to the food, you come home to clothes, you come home to, you know, Mom, we're all going on a trip here. We're all doing, you know, my parents, they came to every last band practice, every last band event I had, or track meet, or, you know, it was just like, those are the things, like they didn't have to sit and be like, have these like in-depth conversations with me about like why they love me and what was, you know, they do love me. I think the first time I actually heard my parents tell me they love me was like as an adult, like, you know what I mean? Like in a sense of me remembering, like they might have done it when I was like 5 to 6, you know, but as me growing up, my dad wasn't like sitting there like, look, son, I love you, like that. No, he was just doing a lot for me. You know, he was really holding me down in that aspect and that within that mind state. So he knows like love ain't nowhere else but right here. You know, I love you. You know, I never questioned it, even though he never said it. I never questioned it. So I think that also taught me going into relationships. So where I learned love languages was through Bell Hooks' book, All About Love. So that was the first time I actually sat there and was like, oh, maybe I don't know what I'm doing with loving a woman, you know, because my daughter as well, my daughter's 14, so that was my first time even seeing like, okay, loving my daughter differently than how my parents taught me how to love, you know. So I tell my daughter I love her every day, you know. She tells me she loves me, you know. So it's like it's a little different than what they're doing, but how they taught me, but it's still like, it's still a product of that, you know what I'm saying? But like I said, like I learned that from like the Bell Hooks book. So it was like, and she has a book called The Will to Change that was more focused on masculinity, and that really what took me to the next level of like, because there's levels of all this, levels of love, there's levels of, you know, like just being within, knowing yourself, knowing how to love someone. So, you know, that you have to, I think you have to want the information, you know, you got to want the knowledge to learn and grow, you know what I'm saying? So. Yeah.
And Qari, I know that you also have a daughter, correct? Mm-hmm. How, you know, have you, similar to what Renzell is talking about kind of taking these either things that you have received or have not received, right? Yeah. Has that shaped at all how you approach love with your daughter? You know,
absolutely. Yeah. I call it like chasing a ghost, because like I have a lot of both of my siblings, nobody in my family, like a lot of people in my family and friend group did not grow up with their fathers. I'm one of the few people in my close family and chosen family that grew up with a father and has a father that's been present in their lives, and I would take that for granted. So, but in a lot of ways, you know, having two parents is just not enough for us as Black people too. You know, like we need more. It really takes a village. So I think with me, I'm constantly doing, like you say, you know. I tell my daughter I love her as much as possible, and I'm expressing love for her, to her support for her in every way that I can. Very random, but the movie Arrival, have you seen it?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, it's about language. It's about them trying to talk to these aliens. And I really feel like that's like figuring out love, like sometimes. And one of the quotes in that actually is that there's 96 words, there's 96 definitions for the word love in Sanskrit. Wow. And I that's like so beautiful to me, you know, like it is this all in like there's so many levels to it. And I think having us as men too, having daughters and like, that's like foreign territory, right. You know? So really learning another language truly, and yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. Well said, man. Well said. I do remember that movie, and I remember the language barrier being that's the gist of the movie is that language barrier. Kay, how about you? You know, reflecting on your father, relationships with father figures. How does that shape how you approach these love languages? You know, your primary ways of giving and receiving love.
Yeah, my partners will tell you that I am an acts of service person almost to a fault. Like, if you need something to get done, it's gonna get done by the end of the sentence that you let me know. Cause I'm not like, if I'm caring for you, if I want to make sure that you are content and you are, you know, all within yourself, and you let me know that there's something that needs to be done, what else am I going to do other than to do it? That just feels like what has been called to me recently. And I think that that's something that my dad kind of was like. And I think that I attribute that to him just being as involved as he was with all these different things. Like, I remember from my first martial arts tournaments, he was like showing me Bruce Lee movies, like, you know, staying up late watching them before the tournaments and like really taking it to the next step. Because it's like, it's one thing to go into training like 3 times a week, as intensive or less intensive as you want to do it. But it's another thing to like have almost an in-home coach getting you psychologically ready for whatever is about to go down. So on that regard, and then just like showing me how to mow the lawn or showing me how to drive, like that was really something that he was always there and present for. And I feel like that is something that I always try and show as much as I can for the people that I care about.
On the next Hustle, Play, Love, I'll be talking to a travel expert and an apprehensive solo traveler about the advantages and joy of traveling abroad alone. And a relationship show co-host joins me to talk about incivility in dating. Where's the harmony and how can we get it back? Join the conversation Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. on CanTV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org or on the CanTV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
I'm in my bag. So soft and so tender. So Pops really equipped you with the tools to be able to be somebody that gives, you know, that acts on service, basically.
Yeah, and he was just a big person on skills and tools and like learning how to like do things and be useful and you know, utilize that for the people that you love. And not only that, but to help boost yourself up. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was teaching me how to line my own hair up and being like, every time he would cut my hair, he's like, yeah, you got to learn how to do this. So when you go to college, you got to have some extra money in your pocket for college. I ain't cut one head in college.
I tried to cut one and I was like, yeah, this ain't going to be my thing.
My dad always trying to put me on them little hustles. Like, he was always like, you need to go shovel. And like, I had that kind of guy. Like,
yeah, but that's tight though, that like, I think I learned that those things are like the most important things that we can do for our children. That's like the small things, like teaching them how to mow the lawn, teaching them how to drive a car, like teaching like, because I had seen that from my daughter, like when I taught her how to, you know, ride her bike, taught her how to brush her teeth properly. Like, these are things that instilled in us till we're grown, and now we know that, you know what I mean? Like, just hearing you say it, it's like, dang, like I came up with that myself. Like, I thought about that myself. I'm like, dang, these are the most important times. Like, having her come home and like, you know, having to study right and like knowing, you know, like helping her with her homework and telling her when to go to bed. Like, these are the things that like, just the small, you know, nuances in our child's life that like that's really going to, you know, shape them to be who they are. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's really cool to like have those moments and to even be able to say that, like, you shouldn't take that for granted, to be able to say that you had your father to do these things and instill those things and tell you to do this and to show you these things. Because that's like, having my dad had me out there with a lemonade stand, like, you know what I'm saying, like going to shovel snow, like all of those things. Like, I was cutting hair and, you know, and in college in the same way, you know, just because my dad used to cut my hair, and I'm like, okay, same, you know. So it's like, damn, we can't take that, like, those things for granted, like those small things that we might feel is small, but it's like, shoot, I use it every day, like, you know.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like the lessons that he was teaching me, like, I wasn't even able to appreciate until I got older. You know what I mean? Because, like, I'm looking back on all these memories fondly, but I didn't want to do any of those things at the time that he was telling me to do it.
I take the garbage out.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But I like what you're saying too about, like, not really being able to appreciate it in the moment. Speak a little bit more on that, and why is it important for that to even be a statement, right? Like, when we think about, we've been talking so much about what we have taken on from our fathers, but at some point I want to be a father, right? And so I'm keenly listening to what y'all are saying. Yeah, of course. You know, I want my shot at it, you know. But why, you know, why is it important for us to acknowledge that, yeah, at the time, I wasn't really feeling it, but like now in adulthood, it's like, you know, we're grateful for these things. We speak fondly of these things.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the testament of time, you know what I mean? It speaks to the willingness to change your perspective and learn. And obviously all these moments wouldn't be possible if they didn't happen, you know? And I think that I can sit here and appreciate that now because I have the opportunity to look back at that. Like, I couldn't have appreciated it if I didn't, like, grow from it and utilize it in my everyday life to see how valuable it was, you know? And I think one thing that I try and focus on a lot is just learning as much about what I don't understand as I can, or just trying to be there to listen for it.
It's kind of actually similar to what Mello was talking about in last week's episode about being like, just putting your pride kind of aside and your ego aside and being ready to learn something new.
Okay, so here's where it comes together. I think that it's important for us to recognize it if we have the opportunity to, because that is going to be so helpful for us for understanding when our kids don't want to do it later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's the trope of the annoying teenager, or the arrogant teenager, or the teenager that, you know, it's classic that parents and teenagers don't understand each other and they butt heads. But the more that we can, like, sit back and question why somebody else might be feeling a different kind of way and remember what you were feeling in those moments, then you might be able to find a point of relation. Like, I hope that I can be able to talk my son or daughter out of a temper tantrum at whatever age they are, whenever they're going through it, because I remember what it felt like that when I was going through it. Or understand when they are going to talk back to me when I tell them to go do something that they don't want to do. Like, I understand that that's going to come with the territory, and I hope that they are going to be able to give me at least some grace to understand that this is just what I have to do in order to, like, bring you up in the right way, at least a way in which that you can sustain yourself. Because what is the right way? You know what I mean? But yeah, just it's just a perspective changer, really. Like, realizing that all these moments are valuable and are like the bread and butter of what you need, and not just, like, I don't know, hanging out with your friends or playing video games or whatever. You can't appreciate that stuff until you get older.
Right. No, well said. Well said. And with that, I want to just acknowledge that Black fatherhood is beautifully vast. It can span from biological relation to chosen family, and Black fatherhood in particular is beautiful. It's had to endure generations of misunderstanding and mislabeling. We hope that this conversation sheds some light and insight into your own relationships at home. We thank you for tuning into our Soft and Tender world today. You can continue the conversation with us by following us at Soft and Tender Series on Instagram and TikTok, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Soft and Tender. Until next time, I'm Rich Robbins. Good night. He said, you don't have to play the part that they wrote for you. You don't have to play the part. I'm like, how he do that twice? Why that boy so nice? Why he cuffed the mic like a baby bite? So soft and tender. Bet he like that in any weather. Bet he only bite if he don't get it twisted. I be in the gym ready to box. Why would I not? Niggas out here creeping hard on the block. My pops taught me if you can't win the fight with your brain, you could definitely throw a hand.